All right. Hello, everybody. Hope you're having a happy new year so far. This is Sir Bradley, and I have another bonus episode for you. I am very excited to introduce author S.D. Smith, who has written the Green Ember series of books. These are books that are children's books, young teens, but really any age will enjoy these books. I read them myself. I thoroughly enjoyed them. I felt like I was going back in time and just enjoying a great story as a kid again. If you like Lord of the Rings, Chronicles of Narnia, the Redwall books, anything like that, you are going to love these books. I really think that they are modern classics in the making. And if you're like me, I'm always looking for some great books that will reinforce values at home and just books in general that bring the good, the beautiful, and the true. And Green Ember definitely fits that bill. Word of caution, for some reason, when the interview starts, I come in pretty hot on the mic. I was probably just super excited, but then I mellow out. So don't worry about it, ride through it, and enjoy the interview with author S.D. Smith. Cool. All right. Okay. Hi, everybody. I am Bradley Hassey from the Junior Classics Podcast, and I have another great special guest for us today. This is Sam Smith. I will let him introduce himself, but the reason I'm having him on is my wife found Sam and this book online, The Green Ember, and thought it might be good for our kids. So I read it and I was blown away by it. I really enjoyed this book just as an adult. It kind of took me back to it was kind of nostalgic. I felt like a little kid just enjoying a great story again. So Sam, would you tell us
Yes, thank you, Bradley, for having me on here. Are you Bradley or Brad? Bradley?
most people call me Brad.
Brad? Okay. I don't know. I don't want to. I don't want to go above your helmet or anything here. I don't want to mess with a ranger.
Oh, there's no offense taken here.
Well, thanks so much, Brad. I really appreciate that. What you said about the books. That's very kind. Gosh, I'm a regular old dad, husband from West Virginia, Southern West Virginia, which is almost heaven. And I don't think I think it's something in the Bible about how you can't get to heaven without going through. I'm not sure. I need to check my
I think
theology,
it's
but
in there.
it's the fine print. But I'm a dad to 4 kids, 2 boys, 2 girls, and been telling stories for the last several years and really enjoying that. It's been a blessing to be uh, I don't know, to be able to connect with lots of families around the country, especially for these stories that started out as just kind of for my own kids, and that lots of other families have invited me into their homes has been like an unbelievable honor and a privilege. So I'm going to keep doing that as long as I can.
Awesome. So yeah, I was reading a little bit about how it seemed like you guys saw bunnies or rabbits in your yard, and that's kind of how the story started, just making up stories for your kids. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, I was just not too far from where I'm sitting right now. I'm in my office, which is like a garden shed, a converted garden shed, which we call the forge, because that's where a smith works in the forge.
Absolutely.
Kind of corny, but it works for us. So, but I was on the porch with my daughter. She's 17 now. She was just a little toddler then, and I used to tell her all kinds of stories. And that day it was kind of like a moment that was ripe for stories. And and saw some rabbits hopping around in the yard and decided to tell her about an older sister rabbit and the younger brother because she had a little brother. And the story just kind of grew and grew from there. The kids really loved them and really connected with them big time. So that led me to just kind of keep it up.
Nice. Well, actually, I had a question about the forge because I thought that sounded cool, and I'm actually listening to this course on Tolkien, and it's called the Forge of Tolkien. And so I was
Ooh.
thinking, you got the Forge of Smith over there cranking out these stories. So I think that's sweet.
It is
Um,
cool, and I'm obviously doing way better than he did. So I'm trying to tell more people about him so that some people will hear about him. Just try to raise his profile a little bit.
Absolutely. So how did this go from you just making up stories with your kids to you know world building this world and this universe of these stories with the rabbits and all the different kingdoms and animals? How did it grow from that to these several novels?
Well, at first it didn't. I mean, it was just a serial, just kind of like I would tell it to the kids on walks and bedtimes and that kind of thing, natural storytelling opportunities. So I didn't. I think that some of that stuff just kind of comes to me a little bit naturally. I mean, I was always one of those kids that was playing and imagining, and sort of when no one was around, I was on the Enterprise, or some other spaceship, or I was like trying to find the Ark of the Covenant or something. I was always either playing in some other world that was created or kind of making up my own. And from a pretty young age, I did a lot of making up my own sort
Hmm.
of worlds and stories, even though I wasn't a very literate. I mean, I could read, but I didn't read a lot I didn't really read at all independently as a kid.
Really?
Yeah, I was kind of a late bloomer on that front, which gives hope for particularly boys. I love to hear that boys got kind of hooked on writing by starting my stories, because I always thought it was so lame that I kind of bought into the cultural narrative around me that like boys don't really read. It's really
Hmm.
something for girls, which is dumb and lame.
Sure.
And thankfully, seeing a lot of boys, a lot more boys reading now. But still, it's still boys are a really overlooked group in when it comes to storytelling, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
But yeah, so the I guess at some point during our time together, we came to a point in the story where the kids were just like, wow, that was, which actually is the climax of the Green Ember book. And they were just like, Daddy, you gotta write this down. And
Hmm.
so, and I felt the same way. I was like, wow, that was really special. And I thought, well, at least to make an artifact, even if it's nobody ever reads it or buys it or anything, I'll have this artifact of our time together, and it'll
Yeah.
become special in our family. So I had kind of low expectations in a sense. I didn't feel like it was kind of special, but I was sort of convinced that I'd written the kind of the perfect book, because I thought it was a perfect book that no one would read, because I thought it was like the themes were too mature, or like it was
Hmm.
too serious, like too sort of epic for like little kids. But I thought, because it was rabbits, like older kids wouldn't read it. So I thought, well, I've written the perfect book that no one will read. But I happily was found out that wasn't true. But yeah, the world building just kind of, when I sat down to write, it just kind of, it was there, and I did work at it for
Hmm.
sure, and kept going. But a lot of it was like a work of discovery. It feels like discovery more than invention sometimes to me, like a found thing instead of a created thing. And so I feel like using gifts and materials that God has created, and I'm sort of like Tolkien. I feel like a sub creator, or maybe compared to Tolkien, like a sub creator. uh, but I really enjoy it, and it's fun. And I'm not as detailed, of course, as someone like him, and maybe not as slapdash as some. But I somewhere my little niche. I feel like I'm doing the best I can, and it's been a delight. I love it.
Nice.
I get to
So
play as a
that
43-year-old man. I get to play for a living.
that's the dream, right? So before you wrote your first story, what were you doing before then for work?
For a long time, I worked in adult education in West Virginia. I was doing kind of like, uh, I was given kind of like the GED, that sort of a thing, working with
Hmm.
folks who were trying to transition out of welfare and into work. So that was sort of my day job, which was a pretty good job, and I enjoyed it, and I felt like it was good work and noble work. But I sort of always had this dream, and I would sort of pray, Lord, if it's okay with you, I'd love to be able to do the storytelling more. And he's astonished me by answering that prayer with a yes.
Yeah. So before we get into the book, how did that work? You're, working a job and you want to write this story, and now this is like a full-time business for you, correct?
Yes.
So how did that transition? How was that transition from doing that to where you're at now? How long did that take?
Well, the Green Ember came out around 6 years ago or so. It would be, I guess, in January. So the first 3 years were just, we had pretty modest expectations, or maybe you might say fearful expectations of like, oh, how could we possibly sell even the books that we printed on our first run? We were just like, oh, if we could get rid of these 1,500 books in 18 months, that would be, we could break even. We'd be okay. We were just really nervous and about it, but that, we were reprinting just really quickly, and it took off pretty well. And for several years there, I was kind of working basically what would account for two to three full time jobs, working in my church and coaching soccer and had young kids, and so it was a very hectic period of life for
Yeah.
sure. And it was like a lot of other things when we were pretty conservative. I take my calling to be like a provider and in my family like pretty seriously, and
Sure.
I was concerned about that, so I waited. I didn't want to just jump into it without. So I was pretty careful, but it was like a lot of other people expressed. Like after we did go, my brother and I left our jobs and we started working full time about 3 years ago, and it was kind of like, why didn't we do this sooner? That kind of a thing. But I think the timing was fine, and we've enjoyed. Um, and work has certainly filled the newly available space like it always does. And but it's been, if you're, it's kind of a pick your poison kind of thing. You're always going to
Yeah.
work hard if you're going to try to do something that's meaningful. And it's just like it's been nice to have the challenges that I have to be in this area that I feel so called to, and so I feel grateful to be involved with.
Awesome. Right on. Well, let's get into the book. Actually, what I meant to say first was, I had my wife showed me your stuff. I read the book, and then, oh, I have my podcast, and somebody was connecting me with somebody at church, and I just told them what I was doing. I was like, yeah, I have this interview with SD Smith coming up, Green Ember books. And they're like, we love those books. Like, they were all about it. They're like, we have all of them. And then somebody else I talked to, they're like, yeah, we love those books. And then one of my best friends from the army, I brought it up with him. He's like, oh yeah, we love those books. So apparently everyone hid the secret from me, but our kids are kind of young still. So I think we're not quite at that stage where they're at this reading level. But hey, there's a lot of people that have heard about these books and really love them.
I think you
So
must have just ran into my mom and my cousin and stuff. I think you probably that could have. Well, what's fun is I have been blessed. You said you have a friend in the army. Like we've heard a ton from folks in the military who love
mm,
these stories, and a lot of families will write and say, which is an awesome blessing to me because as I was sharing with you before, my dad's a veteran, my grandfather's a veteran, and our families. We're in West Virginia. There are a lot of veterans here, maybe like more per like for our population than maybe anywhere else, and
hmm,
at least certainly near the top. And it's a big honor, and to I have so much respect for you guys and what you agree to when you say that I will stand in front of you. When the worst happens, I will be there. And I think that there's no honor, no value that we can place that really repays that commitment enough. And some people are like, "Well, I didn't fight in a war." And I'm like, you would have, you agreed to,
sure.
and you signed on the line saying you would, and so that means everything to me as a dad and as the person who values my liberty and values my kids, my family. So grateful to you guys. So we've heard a lot from veterans and veterans families. A lot of wives of folks who are serving will write and say this story helped the kids understand what their dad's doing.
Hmm.
And that means so much to me because I was
Yeah.
trying to faithfully represent like the heart of a soldier and talk to my dad a lot. Even some
Hmm.
of the characters in the books are named after people that he served with, and just to honor them. And so it means a lot to me that folks in the military have been blessed by it, and I certainly want to be faithful about how I'm telling stories. Because the stories for kids, they don't deal with the grittiest and most difficult realities, but I don't I want to honor them by reflecting reality in the stories, telling the truth that people there are glorious aspects of battle, of course, as they're remembered, but most of the time the people in them don't want to be doing it, and it's a sacrifice, and there's fear, and there's. I just wanted to be honored, kind of give kids a picture of some little picture of the reality of how challenging it can be and how noble it can be to lay down your life for people you love.
Absolutely. Yeah, some of the things that really stood out to me, like some of the themes, loyalty was in there, the importance of family, um, the family name. I've only read the first book, just so you know.
It
So
goes
the
downhill from there. It's just
oh, get out of here. The family name when that the long shredder name is reconciled at the end, or their name finds some redemption at the end. I was like, man, that is so powerful. Obviously, facing fear, there was a lot of that.
yeah.
Being brave, telling the stories of courage. I like how the the brother rabbit, his dad, he referenced like I know my dad told us these stories of courage to kind of prepare us for, when we're adults, we have to face this conflict
Mm,
and just betrayal in there, pride again, the boy rabbit having to deal with his pride. Those are all great themes that I think, boys and girls should be exposed to.
mm. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I really like the Starseed game, how that kind of came full circle at the end of the book, and it was almost like that game chasing after the ribbon in the wind was that was like preparing them for the conflict that they would see later.
Mm. Yeah,
Uh,
for sure. It's funny that you're the second person. I did an interview yesterday, and
hmm,
that person was like totally like they said their kids were really into the Starseek, and that was like a big. And it's funny because I think of that as a kind of a detail. And actually, if you read more in the series, you'll see there is more about that. But yeah, that was yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate that you're noticing a lot of things that are definitely true about those stories. I hope the stories are faithful to just like reality with a capital R, that they tell the truth about the world and they don't even with the difficulties or that I didn't make characters who are perfect, but characters that needed to grow and learn and adapt and dealt with fear and were challenged to keep faith and to it's a hopeful book. It's about hope in a lot of ways. It's about a hope for the mending that's coming, but it's really about keeping faith with a cause, and that's where you talk about loyalty and love, and about sort of like doing what you can with what you have in the place where you are, even if it's modest or unsung, in these small ways, and that like together, if we're all doing that, then it's powerful. Like it matters. Like our choices matter.
yeah, that when their name is finally redeemed at the end, that was especially impactful on me because my grandfather, the one he'll give lots of advice, but his main piece of advice to anybody in our family is remember your name.
Mm,
And our last name, everywhere you go, you're representing our family.
mm.
And I just thought that was really powerful for me.
Oh man, me too. My dad, when he would drop us off as kids, wherever it was, like a football game, basketball game, or school, or sleepover, anything. It was when we got out of the car, the last thing he would say was, "Don't forget whose boy you are."
Mm,
And I've always remembered that, and I say that to my kids too. And it's the same kind of thing. Like and I didn't take it as in like don't shame us, necessarily, but like remember who you are, remember that you belong, remember that you're loved, and don't forget. So yeah, that was a powerful theme of the story to me too. Was that I felt that like, ooh, our name's a disgrace. And spoiler alert, there's some resolution there.
all right, very good. uh, Now, I thought there were some obvious signs of allegory in the story. Was that intentional on your part, or is that something that kind of developed as you started writing?
Well, so I would argue that there's no allegory, but I think what Tolkien talked about allegory, and a lot of people say that C.S. Lewis wrote allegorical stories, but he didn't. He wrote supposal stories. Suppose that Christ came into the world of Narnia as a lion, and it's a little bit different than an allegory. And I sort of take sides with Tolkien, who said that he says, I cordially dislike allegory in all its manifestations, and
Hmm.
have ever since I was old enough to detect it, because allegory lies in the purposeful domination of the reader by the author. But what people do is they mistake allegory, and here I'm sort of quoting him still, but imperfectly, but they mistake allegory for application or applicability. And so what I find, what I think is true about this story, what I think is true about the Lord of the Rings, and what I think is true about the Green Ember is that there's a lot of applicability. There's not really any allegory. There's not, this character doesn't stand in for
Hmm.
this or that. But I think it is like, if so, say you say if you're a Christian, like I've heard from a lot of people who aren't Christians who the story, they love it. But if you're a Christian, the story is definitely going to ring your bells. It's
Sure.
definitely going to harmonize. You're going to feel like, oh yeah, like that's how I feel when I read the Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is certainly not an allegory at all, but you see Gandalf coming back, and it's reminiscent. You see the king
Yeah.
coming back, and it's wow. You see the redemption, you see the return, you see the wedding, you see the feast. I mean, all this stuff is just like wow. But it's still faithful to its own world
Hmm.
in a way that I think is honest and generous to readers. So that was my intent. Was not to, my intent was really to be in the world and think of what would actually happen here without sort of like, because I didn't want the kids who are reading it or folks who are reading it to feel the burden of like, okay, so that stands for that now. I didn't want them to be doing math the whole time. I wanted them
Right.
to just get lost and get,
Yeah.
as C.S. Lewis said, to sort of slip past those watchful dragons of the intellect and enjoy it in the imagination. So
Yeah.
so the aim was definitely delight, and there's a lot of applicability for sure. That a lot of stuff that will resonate in the stories, and
Absolutely.
I'm
Yeah,
guessing.
maybe allegory is a little too specific, but I mean, definitely some themes that resonate, with Christians or anybody who sees this world and is like, man, this world's kind of broken, and
Yeah,
don't we all yearn for a mended wood, like
yeah.
in your story? And that's just I really liked the mountain with all the the gathering of the exiles, and you have the different guilds, and they're getting the artisans together, and they're all creating in hope of this mended wood, in hope of this greater world to come after they fight for it. I just thought that was really powerful also.
Thank you. Yeah, there's definitely a theme in there, which I think is again talk about stories bubbling up from the leaf mold of the mind. That everything that falls in the forest sort of like grows, and it grows in the soil, and you can't always trace it back to like, oh, is that where he really loved the book Ecclesiastes? Does that mean it came from? It's hard to know exactly where everything comes from, but certainly the soil of my life, it's came through that, and those themes of calling and vocation, of the importance of different vocations, of even modest vocations mattering, that soldiers matter, but also people who do laundry matter, and also
Yeah.
people who teach matter, and people who tell stories, and people who make mugs and candles and arrows, and that all these sort of, and doctors, and that really, I value that a lot, and I feel like I've felt a lot of liberty in even just vindication. I don't know if that's not the right word, but I'm looking for a word. I'm a writer, but I can't think of words. Validation. I feel
Yeah.
like a validation in my own vocation of saying like, no, that there's a place for you. It's not heroic in the same way that a Medal of Honor soldier dying, saving someone, doing something amazing. Like it's not the same as that, but it doesn't have to be. Like there's a place for my calling, even as modest as it is in the world, and there's a place for the cook and for the cleaner and for the plumber and the pastor. And so yeah, I wanted to, I didn't necessarily again set out to say like I'm going to teach people about the value of vocation and so I will tell a story. It was like that just came through the story, but it's definitely powerful. It's because I think it's powerful to me,
Yeah.
and I think that
Well,
again that reflects reality.
yeah, I mean, just thinking of a world where people create using their God-given gifts
Mm,
is, I mean, isn't that kind of what we all are striving for, or we all want for each other?
yeah,
So
and they tell each
awesome.
other this story of the mending, that they encourage each other, that like that what they do isn't what they do matters, and that the setbacks are like, well, that there's a healing coming. And so yeah, it's definitely like you said, it's pretty, it rings true for us when we look around the world and think, oh, that's what we need.
Yeah. So what's a day in the life of a writer? Are you when you were writing the books, or if you're writing now, are you writing every day? How do you schedule that?
Well, I'm not the very best scheduler. I am a plotter. I'm gotten more disciplined, and I think it's important for writers to develop humble, hopeful habits, and to show up. That's the most important thing. I feel like a lot of creative, so-called creative types are often very like have big dreams, but they also have high standards, and so they feel paralyzed by a lot of perfectionism. And so
Hmm.
part of the whole like struggle is having the humility to show up and work, and not waiting for the muse to hit you perfectly or that kind of thing. Like these sort of myths of creative people who you know take illicit substances and don't sleep well and don't take care of their body or their mental health at all, and just sort of some amazing stuff pours out of them somehow in these long binges or something. I think that's just a bad picture of like what it's actually like,
Right.
to show up to a vocation and to say yes to it. And maybe if you are an introspective, creative type of person, then maybe you will struggle with like some of those things a little bit more. Maybe you'll have more tendency towards a depression or anxiety, that kind of thing. But that doesn't mean like, oh, just indulge that so you can be an interesting artist. No, like take care of yourself because the stuff you're creating is for other people. Because I believe that the calling of a writer, for me as a Christian, is supposed to be rooted in love and service. That it's not just kind of about fame or self-expression. And I'm this brilliant, special butterfly, and whatever comes out of me, everyone should gather around and listen. No,
Right.
I'm supposed to serve people. I'm supposed to give them a gift and love them, and to do that, you got to show up, and you got to take
Absolutely.
so you sit on your backside all day and write, and that's not good for you. So you got to get up and move, and you got to take care of yourself, and in order to be a generous and hospitable person in your calling. So I try to do that. I preach that to myself, and I try to show up and be faithful and be bold, because the character of Heather in the story is someone I really identify with a lot,
Mm.
with the timidity and anxiety, and so showing up and trying to be brave. And being brave for me may mean something a little bit different than some other people's. Some things might be difficult for me that are easy for someone else, and something might be easy for me that's difficult for someone
Right.
else. But just showing up and trying to be brave in the ways that I can. And yeah, I try to stay disciplined. I try to write every day,
Mm.
that I can, unless we're getting ready to publish a book, because we kind of do it all ourselves. So a lot I've got to do. I'm more than just a writer. I've got to be an entrepreneur and a marketer, and I've got to kind of do a lot of things. So I try to handle a lot of that stuff, and do interviews occasionally, and but I try to, particularly when I'm writing a book, which most of the time, I'm trying to daily, even if it's just a little bit, but trying to show up. And like today, I think I wrote like 900 words, but that's good. I got it down, and the ball keeps going down the field. And
Right.
sometimes it's like not a first down. Sometimes it's like I'm stumbling, or even a tackle for a loss at times. But I'm still trying to move the ball up the field. And if I keep showing up every day, then it seems like that it happens.
Yep. Hey, showing up's half the battle, and if you keep going forward, you're going the right direction. So,
True. So true.
well, one of those young readers I was talking about, he asked me to ask you a couple questions, if that's
Uh,
all right. One of the
sure.
ones you already touched on, and he wanted to know, are any of the characters in the book based on real life?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, in one sense, definitely not. As in, like, there are no one for one. Like, I made this character and he's just like him. What I
Right.
did instead was I would name someone in honor of someone else. So there's a Potter in the book called Ephah Potter, and it's basically his. He's probably the closest in a lot of ways, because I actually know a guy named Eddie Ephah who's from here in West Virginia. He lives in Memphis now, and we met at a conference, and I just liked this guy a lot, and we kind of connected because we're both hillbillies from West Virginia. And he's a potter. He makes pottery, and he's just
Hmm.
like excellent potter. And I've got some of his pottery in my office here. But so I just named this character who was making pottery. I named him Ephah after him. And Ephah Potter is like a ditz. He's always and Eddie, my friend Eddie's not like that. But
Right.
so the name is there, and actually the vocation is there too for him. And I do that from time to time. Like I said, one of the characters later on in the story, there's a character named Lalo, who's named after one of my dad's friends from Vietnam,
Hmm.
who served with him in Vietnam. And there's a few other ones that I'll just kind of slip in here every once in a while. But mostly, I don't want people to. Mostly, I'm trying to think in world. So when I'm
Sure.
naming characters, I'm trying to think like what would actually be a name in this. And another rule I have is I try to make it simple, like simple to say, because I read a lot of fantasy where there's like a name of a planet or a character, and it's like got 15 X's in it or something, and I can't.
Right.
So every time I get there, I'm like,
Lots of syllables.
yeah, how do I even say this? So I was trying to be generous to kids, so like they wouldn't have to keep stopping and like what. So even if it's a normal name we use in our everyday life, I would almost try to spell it so it was easier to pronounce. So that was my general rule with names. But there are a few in there, a few characters who have a, I don't know, some kind of a little allusion to a friend or a colleague.
Nice. Very cool. And then just one more. If kids are interested in developing their storytelling and writing skills, what is a good way to start?
So if you're pretty young, like, and you're just sort of starting out, it's like, oh, I just like to do it. I would I would I would really focus on just enjoying it and having fun, and not getting too tied up. Like, just do it, kind of like playing basketball or something. When you're first starting out, like, don't think too much, or soccer, like, you don't have to think about like the offside trap
Right.
and how to have the technique of, playing with both feet. Like, pretty much first year, like, just go out there and like maybe learn how to go the direction of the goal. So I would just, like, when you're first starting out, if you're really young, just go, just have fun, enjoy it, right? Do things that are short, keep it going. And I think a lot of that's applicable when you get a little bit older and a little bit more mature. But if you're getting serious about it, it's about showing up every day. It's about, I think, being comfortable with not being very good. I think that's a really, really good advice for someone who's kind of serious about it.
Mm,
Is don't get too psyched out by stinking. It's okay to stink for a while. It's okay to imitate for a while, I would say. So if you like an author, if you like a J.R. Tolkien or C.S. Lewis or somebody, and you just like sort of like, or you like Lassie or something, you kind of want to write stories like that, like, go for it. That's not a big deal. Don't worry about being original too much when you're young. Like, it's okay to, your voice will come through as you keep going. I wouldn't sweat that. And also, you're going to stink. Like, everybody who ever tried anything in the history of the world always stinks at it to begin with,
absolutely.
generally. And what happens is we don't like that feeling. So we go
Right.
out and shoot hoops with people and you never played before, and like someone laughs and you're like, well, I'm not good at basketball. And you get to label yourself. I'm not good at that. And
Mm,
you get to quit. I'm not good at math. I'm not good at English. I'm not good at writing. I'm not good at horseback, whatever. But the people who keep doing it, the people who are good at it, are people who just kept going. They had
right.
humility enough to say, like, well, yeah, I'm not good at it, but I'm going to be. And generally, most people can be good at most things, pretty good. Talent accounts for a lot less of success than we think, and that's certainly true in writing. If you have a certain amount of talent, it pretty much breaks down into hard work after that, and then a lot of other things. But so don't quit when you stink. Like, just stink. It's okay. And you might, what if you're aware of how bad you stink at it, then that actually might be a gift, because you might have really good taste,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, that's not really up to snuff. Well, how do you know that you have good taste? Well, keep going and get better and get better. And every writer that you know of that you respect has manuscripts in drawers that are just like, that were very good. And you will too, if you keep persisting and you don't quit and you show up. And that's why I think that the heart of it, the root of it, is so important to get back to. For me as a Christian, if you're in it for fame and self-expression, then, good luck.
Right.
Um, but if you're in it for love and service, then it's important that you keep showing up. It's important that you say, I'm here, and I'm here for someone. And people say, write what you know. I say, write for who you know.
Mm,
And love someone, give them a gift, make it modest. Write a story for your grandmother. Write a short story for your grandmother, and do something short that you can write the end on, because it's easy. The population of the town of writers who love to talk about writing, love to look like writers or act like writers, or put on some kind of, I'm a creative facade, get some kind of a color in the hair or the right messenger bag or something. I
right.
want to look like a creative. Like, that's easy. Like,
Mm,
seeming like something is easy. Being something is hard. So value being over seeming, and make for someone and give it to them. And is that modest? Yeah. Is that simple at the beginning? Yeah. Go for it. You're in a different class of writers when you write the end on something. So finish things, try to finish something, make it short. Don't plan out your 7-book epic and keep working on it, and you're paralyzed because you actually know that when you write it, then people actually read it, and then you get feedback like, that wasn't good, or I
mm.
didn't like that part. And that's hard.
Oh yeah.
That's where we have pride. So show up and have humility and take it. Develop a thick skin. Keep your soft heart and keep going. But I think it all comes back to, if you think about it as a vocation of love and service, that is a game changer, because that invites humility, it invites generosity, it invites hospitality, and it's a different focus than what you'll hear popularly, like, this is what an artist is. I would just, like, ignore a lot of that and try to focus on love and service.
Yeah. Well, I love what you just said about thick skin, soft heart. I think I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna use it. That's something I could use.
Me
Um,
too. Me too.
what age group do you market the book to?
Mm, well, what's really weird is so for independent reading, I would say it's a middle grade series. So all 9 books are good for like people 7 or 8 to 12 or 13, like for
Yeah.
independent reading. But that's kind of the sweet spot, maybe. But what we found is that for read aloud, like people, it's an unbelievable, astonishing age group, starting as low as 4 or whatever.
Yeah, I think so.
And I hear from grandparents all the time, older people who say like, I read this by myself. So I'm kind of like uncomfortable with pegging it too much. And because I feel like people have, and I'm the kind of person, I like a good middle grade adventure. So I'm not intimidated by that. As a 43-year-old man, I still love fairy stories and adventures of knights and courage and that kind of thing. So if you're that kind of person, you'll probably like it. And it's probably never too young. Yeah, it probably is too young to start like too really early, but 4, 5, 6, you can start to read aloud, and 7, something like that, depending on the kid, would be a good time to start independently.
Nice. Well, Sam, I think you have created a wonderful gift here. I'm so glad to have read it. I know a lot of people have been blessed. They've told me. Guys, I have these guests on because what I'm trying to do is inspire children to a love of good reading and what's rooted in what is good, beautiful, and true. And I think Sam here has created something like that. So when I see someone like that, I want to promote it. I want to share it with people. And that's why I wanted to have Sam on. Sam, thank you very much. Where can people find out more about you, more about the books?
Bradley, thank you. This was an honor to be here with you. I really appreciate your questions and just the conversation.
Thank you.
And of course, once again, I'm really grateful for your service to our
Thank you,
country.
sir.
That means so much to me and my family. It's easy. I think everywhere you can find me at sdsmith.com. And then everything I'm on Facebook and Instagram, unfortunately. So if you're into that, then you can find, you can find me at those attention sucking places.
Yeah.
But sdsmith.com is an easy place to find me. And honestly, if people want to try out the book, the Green Ember, you can get the audiobook for free at my site. It's real easy to find. So
I did. I half listened and I half read, and I enjoyed the audiobook quite a bit.
oh, good. Thank you.
Very good. Cool. Sam, thank you very much.
My privilege. Thank you.
Now, for you parents out there, I want you to understand why we are doing this, what we are trying to achieve, and how you can help us. This is a rescue operation to preserve the classics and the wisdom within before it is lost forever. Our goal is to inspire children with a love of good reading by safeguarding and breathing new life into the greatest stories in history and empower you, the parents, with a resource you can trust to enrich your child's mind and spirit. We don't want these stories and the wisdom within to be forgotten, so our children don't have to learn these lessons on their own. The most important thing you can do for us is to spread the message and tell others about these stories and what we are doing. If you want to donate, we would love that as well. My promise is that 100% of donations will go to building the impact and quality of the Junior Classics. If you have feedback and thoughts on how we can do things better, please send an email to thejuniorclassics@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.